Scientists are using a freeze corer to take samples from the bottom of Crawford Lake. Filled with dry ice and ethanol, the aluminum wedge is lowered into the lake until it's about 1 meter from the bottom.
And then you let it free fall. And it's got lead weight, so it sinks into the sediment, weighted by that lead, and it sits in the sediment, and as it sits, the bottom of the lake gloms onto it, it freezes onto it. So when you pull it back up, the bed that's frozen onto the side of your sampler comes up, and all those layers are still there.
It's those layers, much like the rings of a tree, that tell the story. Alternating white and dark, the white layers are formed by calcite crystals, which build up only in the summer. Although there are distinctive layers dating back to the mid-1800s, it's the period beginning around the middle of the 20th century that has scientists most interested.
All of the experiments that were done on the sediments, the various kinds of measurements, show that 1950 is a perfect year to choose as that boundary. It's a nice round number for one thing, but it is where we see a sudden shift in sedimentation in Crawford Lake, which reflects the atmospheric changes globally. And here, because we are downwind from Hamilton, the excessive emissions, gaseous emissions from Hamilton reached here in spades.
One of the impacts of those emissions was acid rain, which limited the ability of those calcite layers to form, thus making them very thin and preserving visual evidence of the impact of human activity. Evidence that can now be used to potentially date the beginning of a new epoch. That's important because we have to understand the impact of our behavior on the planet to change it.
If we make the assumption that the way things were for the last 12,000 years continue to be the way they are, the Earth is responding the way it always did, then your understanding of the system and how to fix it, how to make things better is inaccurate, because you're not dealing with, you're misunderstanding the system.
A system that has changed significantly since the 1950s. And if those impacts are to be understood, McCarthy says it's a period that should be studied independent of the previous 12,000 years, which is why there's a push for a new geologic period to be called the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene Working Group has another vote to conduct through March to determine which of 3 remaining sites around the world, including this one here at Crawford Lake, will be put forward to the Subcommission on Quaternary. It's that body who will make a final decision whether or not there's to be a new epoch. Jason Trout, Halton News at Crawford Lake.